Miles, it's a fantastic journey. 34 years in the same agency.
Yes, I never thought it would be quite so long.
Yeah, and that's not common. So what causes you to stay here?
It's not common generally, but it's not uncommon in Ogilvy,
right.
I have to say. So that, I think, says something about the power of the brand,
right.
Which is that at any point in time, you just simply couldn't imagine working anywhere better.
Right.
I've never ever felt the lure of somewhere better.
Right. Now this is a funny sort of handover, because both the person handing over and the person being handed over to are really almost from the Mad Men era. They started their careers in Ogilvy at that time,
yes, and
it's transiting to a very difficult time. So what would you say of the Ogilvy you're handing over to John now?
I think it's in good shape, but obviously I hope John will do an objective diagnosis and come to whatever views he should come to. From my perspective of going out, generally I'm quite happy.
Right.
But I'm never totally content. And David Ogilvy had this saying about divine discontent, which was the most important thing that a leader in an advertising agency could have, that you're restlessly concerned that everything isn't as good as it should be and could be better. But I think what I'm very happy with are a number of things. Firstly, that we're recognised as being the best creative agency in the world. That is just splendid. Secondly, that I think we're recognised increasingly as being the best digital agency in the world, and by that I mean the agency that gets digital at its heart, and that understands that digital is not just an add-on, an extra, but something that has to be baked into the way in which you think about the world and about communications. And the third thing is that we are highly global. Of course, you would expect me to say that, because in a sense I come from both Europe and Asia, and I've spent time in the States. But the fact is that we're a global network at a time when the world is changing very, very dramatically, not least, for instance, in terms of India's future role in the world.
Right. So if you were not retiring from Ogilvy and going on to teaching, if today was your first day at Ogilvy as CEO, what are the things you would do? if you were John.
I would make a number of promises to myself, and one of those promises is that I'd just spend a little bit more time thinking and not travelling and doing.
Right.
And I know John feels that I've been pushing him on a global tour like some kind of pop star. It's terribly good to be reflective, and I think in all one's career in the early stages, one is exceptionally busy the whole time.
Right.
So if I could find some antidote to busyness that allowed one to reflect, think, one probably would have been a better executive.
Right. Now I'm going to sort of put you in the dock here. Women executives at the top.
Yeah.
Now, this wasn't so important, say, in 1982 when you joined Ogilvy, but it's very important today.
Yeah.
Senior management from both genders.
Yes.
So is that something John will have to deal with focus?
Well, I think we all believe it's important. Remember, I've had two women bosses.
Absolutely, bosses, yes.
And both absolutely fantastic,
right.
and taught me a lot. I'm also very proud of the senior women we have in Ogilvy.
Right.
We have a woman running the agency here in Bombay. We have a woman running the agency in London. We've just been to the Philippines, where we have a woman running the agency. We've just had a woman running the agency in China, and so on. So we're pretty good, but is it always as good as it could be? No, it's not always as good as it could be. And some cultures take longer to come on board and to adapt. But as we've been around Asia, for instance, I think we've both felt a sense of joy at the female enablement we've seen.
Right. And when you go now, what are the few challenges that you would whisper in John's ear and say, hey, these are the things I think you should be taken care of?
No, John's his own man, and
no, he's not new, so he's
yes, but he's also independent.
Absolutely, I'm sure.
And the worst thing possible is to have a sort of old parrot on the shoulder of CEO saying, you should look at this, you should look at that, you should look at the other. I don't intend to be that at all. But I think that the great benefit of this handover is that it has been so thought through and so carefully constructed and so long. So we've been travelling around now for 5 or 6 months together.
Right,
it's very rare in advertising that you actually have that degree of succession planning and that thoughtfulness. Normally it's someone's out on his ear, next guy's in, it just doesn't happen like that.
No, I was going to come to that. Ogilvy succession planning has been better than any other agency in the business, I think, overall.
Well,
not now.
Well, thank you for that.
Yeah. Even at the local levels, I think.
Yes, I think it's something we pride ourselves on, and it goes a little bit back to that point about longevity, which is that people don't feel they're in a transactional relationship when they're working with us. They feel they belong to a brand or a family. We always talk about the family a lot. I think people on the outside think, well, what are you doing, drinking your own Kool-Aid? But I promise you, there is a family feeling in this agency. The people who leave the family feel the loss of the family. They often come back, and people outside want to join it. It's got an emotive bond and texture to the relationship between the employer and the employees, which I think a lot of other agencies don't have.
Right. And finally, as you leave advertising and go into teaching, there's a lot of criticism what advertising is supposed to do and what it does. And a lot of, for example, people talk about advertising for good, and then you've got the glass in can and so on and so forth.
Yeah.
Is advertising changing dramatically?
Yeah.
And should it, in your opinion, change dramatically?
Let me just qualify one thing you said. I'm not exactly going to be teaching, but right, let's say as I go into the world of education,
okay, right.
I hope I will teach, but that's
right.
not the primary
right.
purpose. And I think that you used the word advertising as well. I find that a little bit old-fashioned
right.
as a word. I think, the Mad Men era of advertising, when messages were lobbed out to people and they sat passively at home absorbing them, that's gone forever.
Right.
So we're in a different world, and we're in a world of content where people have to choose whether they want to watch or listen your content or not, to receive it. And that makes it very, very different. So even if you wanted to, you couldn't get away, I think, with a lot of things that unfortunately were aspects of the past of the industry. We are the creatures of our audience, and if they want to watch us, we will do well. If they don't, we will go out of business. It's as simple as that.
Right. So, back to that. So if you're saying it's no longer advertising, but it's, say, communication, do you think communication has to move towards doing good things, and brands have to do more good than they were required to do 20 years ago?
100%, yes. I think brands have been through a number of different phases in their history. In the past, brands were quite didactic. They tried to teach people.
Right. Right.
And then brands became seen as a part of culture and part of movements in society. That was fine. Both those things still remain, but if you were to ask me what I think is important about brands today, is that they actually do something. They don't just say something. In other words, people are looking at brands to behave. And that is a result of the digital revolution. It's forced to transparency. What are the motives of this brand? Where does it come from? What does it stand for? What does it believe? What is it prepared to do to manifest that belief? And how does that belief fit into my own view of the world? Right. I couldn't agree more with you. Brands now have to do much, much more than they ever did before. In a way, I think it's very attractive. It's a kind of new golden era of branding, which is much more substantive than it ever was.
Right. And since we're in India, talking on an Indian channel, your favorite India story?
My favorite India story was probably my journey through the heart of India in a bus. When I failed to realise that the upper level of this bus, which I was notionally booked on, was just actually a series of floor planks that had been inserted at head height in the bus. So I found myself at the back of the bus with only my blazer for warmth, driving through the desert and having to lie like this for 7 hours and to stop my head banging on the ceiling of the bus, which was about 6 inches above me. I love travelling in India. One of the things I'll miss most about being in Oxford is that I'll be a long way away and won't be able to come as frequently as I have been coming. But I will be coming back without any doubt.
Thanks so much, and all the best in your new stint in education.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Piyush, I've just finished interviewing Miles and John, and it's fantastic the amount of commonness in them. There's so much Ogilvy in them. So Miles, John, and then you. So what's it like now? Between the three of you, you've competed 100 years.
Yeah, we have more than 100 years between us, and we've been friends for a long time. Miles I've directly worked with for so many years when he was in the region, and thereafter when he became the worldwide CEO. And John and I have been sitting on the worldwide board together for a long time. I think we are all big followers of David Ogilvy. We believe in David's principles, in David's way of treating countries as countries, in David's way of treating people with a sense of responsibility, and looking at work with David's thing of saying it has to reach the consumer. Consumer is not a moron, she's your wife.
Right.
So we are all believers in that, and we are great friends.
So is there continuity or change? What is it now? You've got a new CEO. Normally that would mean...
I think there will definitely be a change in expression of John. He will have some thoughts that he will bring to the party. But Ogilvy is about continuity. So there will be a lot of continuity, but different people bring in different shades of change. And I expect John to come up with things that surprise us and delight us and excite us to do even better than what we are doing today.
Now, you know, it's not as if everybody goes on reading all David Ogilvy's work. But what is it about an Ogilvy company, an Ogilvy branch, that allows this amazing continuity? It happens globally, it happens locally, it happens in a branch.
I think a lot of people, as you must have seen over the years, tend to stay here. I think it is the kind of people, the collection of people, which makes you feel a little more like that. Some might have collected you, and some you may have collected. But there is some energy which is difficult to define. But there's some camaraderie, some bonding, and similar belief in what we need to do.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Piyush, and
Thank
all the best. Let's talk to you and John sometime in the future.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much for watching. That's an action-packed show. There's lots more going on, especially what Shibani has done at Cannes. We'll see that at other timings on CNBC TV 18 this weekend.